Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're back with me and Phil Weiss. He is an amazing individual. I want to tell you all about him. He started off in the financial industry in 1987 as a tax professional, but for the last 25 plus years, he's been working in the areas of personal finance, investment management, as well as being, a certified financial chart holder, the CFA, and he's also a CPA. And he's also a registered life planner designation. And this is a really critical thing because many times people think they have the money and they don't, or worse, they do have the money and then they don't know what to do with it. So, Phil, I would love it if you would just take it away and start with a little bit about how we need to get to know you.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeannie. So as you said, I'm going to make one slight adjustment to what you said because CFA is actually a chartered financial analyst. That's
Analyst, thank you. Thank you so
sure,
much.
sure. And as you said, I've been in this industry for a long time. I started in tax and I actually got to the point I used to do international tax planning.
Wow.
And I told people that I got tired of telling companies how to shuffle paper around so we could increase the size of the national debt. So
Ah,
I get kind of cynical sometimes about things. And then I started to learn more. I always wanted to go into the investing side. The CFA was how I got out of the tax department.
nice.
And then I worked for another advisor before I started my own firm and really love the work that I'm doing. It's a great way to kind of marry the different things that I've learned, and then adding the registered life planner on top of it is like the icing on the cake. And I started my schooling as a psychology major. So
Oh,
to get
interesting.
into this kind of stuff is kind of fun for me, but it's also a great way to get to know people, to understand what really matters to them and help them live their most fulfilled life. Because that's really, to me, being a financial, what a registered life planner does. That's what we're trying to do, is help people live their best lives.
Yeah. So I just want to pause here and just really want to highlight how amazing it is that even though you started your, academic career in psychology, I can't tell you how many times me as a money expert and a money coach, because I deal with people's money psychology, many times tax and investment and just financial professionals do not understand their clients' money psychology. They don't even understand the basic psychology. They're just like, here's what we can offer you. So the fact that you have chosen to have sort of an inside point of view can be really helpful because you can reflect back to your clients what they need and what they don't always necessarily need.
I think that's really true. And also, it can really help them understand. Like, a lot of times we don't know what we need. I'll tell you that becoming a registered life planner, that's an experiential type of training. So I
Oh,
got life planned as I did it. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But some of the elements of my life plan, I didn't even remember were there
oh,
until I went through the process. Like, and it starts with when you're getting trained, like the book we had to read. And I'm reading this book that tells you, oh, do these exercises. Like, yeah, I don't do exercises. But what I do is I think about them, even if I'm not doing them. And then
mm,
all of a sudden, things started to pop into my head that I remember and that had long been forgotten. And so now those are important elements of my life plan.
great. So tell me a little bit more about what is life planning and the evoke process.
Sure. So life planning in and of itself is the best way to explain it is this. I have a client and she said to me, Phil, thank you for your message. Because I shared my life plan on my website and she read it. So thank you for your message. I've been sitting here, I've been trying to build the biggest pile of money, but I never thought about why or what I was going to do with it. And
Mm,
by going through her life plan and reading mine, it helped her understand what it is that mattered. And so now she's in a situation, her first daughter's gone to college. Her
mm,
second daughter's getting close.
yay.
She's been working for all her life and really needed a break.
Mm,
And we went through this process, realized how important that was, and that she could do it. So to me, it's about how do we align how we spend our money with what matters most to us.
yeah, yeah, I love that. That is getting clarity on that why is, can make the difference when not only times are lean, but when times are great. Because there are many people that go up and down with their money. And, depending on where you catch them, either life is great or life is really hard.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, the evoke process, is there any like kind of little nibbles or any kind of like, boom, this is kind of roughly what it looks like when we do the evoke process?
Sure. So evoke is really acronyms, right? The
Gotcha.
first E is exploration. So when you start the process, it's really, I mentioned before about helping you live your most fulfilled life.
Hmm.
Well, it's kind of like, so why are you here? Why are we having this conversation? And what are these things that you want to do to live your most fulfilled life? So first we do that. We explore and really give you a chance.
Hmm.
It's a lot of listening. Like when you're a registered life planner, you're not supposed to be talking a lot. Like, and I don't know if you've ever tried, but on Zoom, you can use like Fathom and things like that, and they'll tell
Yeah.
you how much time you've been talking. And I try to keep that really low.
Yeah. Today, though, you're going way over. Just kidding.
Yes. Today I'm going over, and that's fine. So that's the first part is exploration. Then we get to vision. So vision is a series of 3 questions. I'm not going to tell you all the questions because it's nice if you don't know them all. But the first one is really imagine that money wasn't an object. What would you do? How would you live your life?
Yeah.
And that's kind of just to get you dreaming big and to thinking about these things that you'd like to do. But then we start to narrow it down and you have less time and those type of things. And so now it's not about the purpose of these questions isn't to get to regrets. A lot of people think the last one's regrets. To me, it's about avoiding regret. Because when I go through that third question, hopefully by the time we've done that process, you can identify some things that you could do now. You don't have
Yes.
to wait and say, oh my God, I didn't do these things and feel really terrible because you didn't do them. Let's try and figure out what they are now so that we can do them now.
Right.
So after we go through the visioning process, we put together kind of a statement of things that you'd like to accomplish. And then that O is for obstacles. What can get in the way?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's really not me figuring that out. It's really you, but we talk through it. And then you can figure out, like, I love that conversation because I like the talking to people during that obstacles conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I can see the wheels spinning as they're thinking about, oh my God, yes, this is what I can do to fix that, right?
So this is part of your why of why you do this, because you enjoy when people start to open up.
Yes, absolutely right. And then the K is for knowledge. And so that's where my background and my experience as working as a financial advisor start to come into play. So how do we now allow you to do these things? And then the last E is for now we're going to basically experience or we're going to implement those things.
Hey, that is so awesome. So I love that there's plenty of time for people to get to know you. They have time to get themselves to know themselves at a deeper level. But then also really importantly, like the obstacles aren't there to stop you. They're ways to go around the obstacles. I love that. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, why do you work with women who are facing new beginnings? Like, because I feel like this as a woman, I feel like it's not just us as women, but I know for you it might be like this is who I love working with, but we're all having like a new beginning, and I don't mean necessarily it's a new year, a new day, etc., things like that. I mean things are shifting so quickly. You had a job, you don't have a job. You had this what opportunity living here in this house, and you're not going to do that. I've met people who've traveled all over the country because their life required them to do that. So they were constantly facing new beginnings.
So that story ties back to my growing up. And you'll find that a lot of times our money stories, and I'm sure you know this even better than I do, tie back to things that we experienced growing up. So
Mm,
for me, when I was growing up, my father was typical for many families at that point in time. He was the one that was responsible for the family finances,
yeah.
but he was not good at it.
Uh,
we
Oopsie.
we had bills that got unpaid. I remember when we had utilities turned off, like electricity, telephone, things like that. When I was old enough to drive, I remember going to the utility company to pay a bill so that our services would be turned back on.
Mm,
I was told I could go to college any place I wanted, and I went to Duke. And then my father stopped paying. And I did a lot of things to stay in school, but after my junior year, I left. At its worst, for me, my father forged my name to open up credit card accounts because he couldn't get credit on his own.
oh boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah. So So my mother went back to school in her 40s. She became an occupational therapist and she started her own business. And while we never had this direct conversation, I know that she did it because she was trying to position herself so that she could survive and thrive on her own. Unfortunately, she neglected herself while this was going on. And she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer.
Sorry.
And that was when we found out really how bad things were. My
Mm-hmm.
parents had to sell their house after she was diagnosed. They would have been foreclosed on. They had to move. My mother asked me to help.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I could. I tried, like, I was managing. So there were lots of bills and different things like that for her caregiving. I worked basically 4 days a week so that I could have that fifth day, Fridays. I'd go bike riding. So I took care of myself, right? But then I would then spend the rest of the day with her. But by doing the bike riding, that was good for me because it helped my mental outlook and it was a lot easier to deal with some of the
Yeah.
things I had to deal with, helping with her care. But her cancer ended up metastasizing to her brain, so she passed away.
Mm.
So I kind of view this as I'm still trying to help my mom. And the way
Mm.
I'm doing that is by helping other women not have to experience what my mother did.
So I mean, I just want to take a moment here and really share, like, there's a lot of deep empathy and deep caring that you offer your clients, as well as, women who are just, like I said, they're kind of going through things like, to start this new life. But, when you've had a life like what you've described, that your dad wasn't so great with money to the point that he was kind of, taking advantage of your identity and doing what he could to survive. That you have a way of probably recognizing these women who are sometimes invisible. Like you said, you didn't know any of this stuff until, unfortunately she got sick with breast cancer. And that's kind of what happens, not to everyone, but for quite a few people, that they're, moving along in life, but they're trying to act like, yeah, everything's fine, the white picket fence, we're good, we're good, we're good. And then something else tips the wheel, and then that's it. They can't pretend like they're driving straight anymore. They are going to crash and have a moment. So I love that you work with women who are facing new beginnings, meaning they're maybe trying to recover from a pretty rough divorce, or maybe they've had a health issue themselves, or maybe them financially they've been okay, whatever that might look like, but they're moving forward in the sense that they're like, hey, I know I need to have a different outlook than what I've had. And I really think that's a big thing for a lot of women out there.
Oh, I
Yeah.
completely agree. I completely.
Yeah. 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 So, and you've talked about your own life plan, and when I'm hearing this whole story, and then hearing about your mom and things like that, just looking back at your life plan, maybe before you started your own life planning process, did you notice how you made certain decisions that you're like, I would have done it differently, Jeannie. I would have done it, and it maybe a little slower. I would have gone a little faster. I would have asked for help sooner. Or did you, like, you just kind of put your blinders on, and the blinders on, your hood up, and then you just keep moving forward, which I've seen a lot of people do. They just like, just put on a helmet and ram through everything in life. And you're like, that's not going to work long term.
So that's a really interesting question.
Hmm.
And I've actually, and I love the reference to blinders because I've told my kids that
Hmm.
never go through life this way, because if you're only looking down this narrow tunnel, you might miss something way out here,
Yeah.
but you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And like, if I think about how my career has gone,
Yeah.
that's what I did, right? Because I went in a very different direction than I started. Uh, but I've also had that thought, and I told you, like, I went to Duke for 3 years, right? And I didn't finish.
Hmm.
And if I had to do it over again, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have gone there because I had others like University of North Carolina. And I know Duke and Carolina are big rivals and all that. But if you leave that aside for a second,
Yeah.
it was a lot cheaper.
Mm.
I got a little bit of financial aid. I would have been able to afford that on my own.
Oh, wow.
So if I had to do it all over again, I'd say I would have done that. But then I say, you know what? I look at where I am today. I'm happy. I have a wonderful family.
Yeah.
And none of those things would have gone the way that they did if I had not taken the path that I did. So it's okay.
Hmm.
It's all okay that all this happened because I ended up in a good place. And as long as I end up in a good place, that's what matters.
Yeah. I love how you have sort of that very kind and compassionate, empathetic hindsight looking back, because not everyone has that. And I feel like sometimes when it comes to the money piece, people have to look at their money much more carefully and realize a lot of the decisions you made is because you only knew A in this little, container of information. You didn't know B and you didn't know C and you definitely didn't know E, F, and I could go through the rest of the alphabet. You just didn't know that. But going through the experience taught you all these things. Yeah. Yeah. So I really would love to hear how you help caregivers, because I know you help them.
So look, I've experienced it, right? As I
Yeah.
said, I went through this with my mom. So in that way, it helps me to be empathetic and understand what they're going through. But also, if you're a caregiver, you still have to take care of yourself too. You can't
Hmm.
ignore yourself.
Yeah.
So working on a life plan as part of that, right, can really help, because you can say, well, I need to help whoever this person is that I'm giving care to, but you can't leave out yourself as well. So that's why, as part of the exercises that we do in the life planning, it's not just those questions. There's also something called the Heart's Core Grid. And the Heart's Core Grid sits there and says, like, what are the things we have to do, that we ought to do, that we should do, and who do we have to be, who should we be, and
Hmm. Hmm.
who do we want to be, kind of thing. And
Hmm.
there's also goals for life. What are the things that you want to accomplish, right? And what are the time frames you want to accomplish those in? And also we even go through like an ideal day, week, and year. So
Hmm.
there's all these things that we want to put. So caregiving is all part of that. But
Hmm.
we want to make sure that we don't just look at that. I mean, it's very important. I'm never going to say it's not,
Right.
but we have to take care of ourselves. That's why I said, when I took care of my mom, I went bike riding many times when the weather was nice in the morning first. Just like
Right.
now, I start my day by exercising, because I have a
Hmm.
brother-in-law says, I don't understand how you can deal with the market all the time. I'm like, well, one of the things that really helps is I take care of myself. I get up in the morning, I exercise, I get all those endorphins out, I have a really good feeling for the day.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff that happens is a lot easier to manage. So if
Yeah.
you make sure that you take care of yourself, it's a lot easier to take care of others too.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer, that mental fitness often is born out of physical exercise of some kind. Like I'm a big yoga fanatic. Like I do yoga every day of the week of some kind. Just because I find when you can release that tension, that frustration, then you can look and see things very differently. Or you're like, oh, I guess it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Okay, let's try plan B or C or D, whatever might be available. So I think that's huge. So I wanted to share with you, because this does sometimes happen, and I just kind of go, "Ooh, I hope not." But I also know that sometimes it's up to the adult children to take care of their parents. And I have met folks who have thought about or have done it by liquidating a percentage of their 401k or whatever they had for savings, or unfortunately, in some cases, all of it. Now, also a firm believer that you can start your investment plan at any age if you absolutely have to, and get done what you want to do. Because I've seen people literally pull their retirement around in 10 years. So it's amazing. But they got very focused on that. So I just wanted to hear any words of wisdom, anything that you can share about that, because a lot of times it's a decision they make on their own, and we all just go, "Oh, okay, okay,"
So
afterwards.
there's a few things to keep in mind.
Hmm.
The first thing I always tell people, and this is no matter who you are, pay yourself first. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that,
Yeah.
start by setting up those automatic deductions. Start contributing the sooner you can. If you have kids and they have summer jobs, you can fund an IRA or a Roth IRA for your kids,
Yeah.
or they can fund it, whichever you want to do. But if you're in position, it's really nice if you can give them something to start building with.
Right.
And also remember, if you start working and you get this match in your 401k,
Hmm.
make sure you contribute enough to get the match. Because if
Right.
you don't, the company just thought you were going to take that. So they included it when they decided how much to pay you.
Right.
And so you're throwing money away that you're entitled to. You didn't even think about it. If you had like a 6% match, 6% contribution, you got a 50% match. If you put that 6% in, that's 50%. That's a 50% return on your investment guaranteed, no matter anything. So like those are the things at the beginning. But then as we get later on, 401k loans, those are dangerous, because you put this money in pre-tax, you're taking it out. Now you're putting after-tax dollars back in, so you're losing some of the tax benefit that you got. If you leave your job, you're going to have to pay it all at once, and that can put you in the hole.
Yeah.
Be careful about taking money from your retirement accounts. Know what the rules are, right? If we take money before 59 and a half, we have to pay a 10% penalty.
Yeah.
We don't really want to do that because, again, that's just giving money away. And then think about a rational way to take that money out over time. Don't neglect your retirement. Or when you like, if you need to borrow money, it's a lot easier to borrow money while you're still working than when you hit retirement. So if you neglected your retirement, you can't borrow to make up for it. So you want to make sure you always keep that in mind. It's hard, right? You have to strike a balance. And I think that's one of the things that the life plan helps with too, is striking that balance so that we know the things that matter to us, so that we make sure that we can say, all right, I know I want to take vacations and have experiences. I know I want to take care of my aging parents, as you mentioned. Right?
Yeah.
I know that I want to save for retirement. If I have kids and I want to save for school, I mean, that's a lot of different things, but we want to try and figure out, okay, which ones of those are most important? And then how do we figure out how to allocate among them all so we don't neglect those things? It's really, getting credit card debt is something we want to avoid, right? Because the interest rates are so high.
Right.
So be very careful about those things, but just make sure that you think of the whole picture when you're making any of these decisions. And
Yeah.
if you don't know the rules, talk to somebody.
Yeah. And the other thing too, I really want to point out for everyone is that if you are in some very hefty credit card debt, or there's actually the number one reason people get into debt is from medical stuff. So, but let's just say it could be credit card debt or it could be medical debt. And you think, well, if I can at least, get this money, get this bill off my back. I always think that is a very good conversation to have with somebody like you, Phil, who can actually say, well, let's run the numbers if we do. Let's look at the numbers. If you don't like the numbers, then that's something you got to think about. Or as I say, as a money expert, what are your money making skills? What else can you do? Because a lot of people, they're at their max, and it's kind of like, hey, you got to look at it from a different angle, another way, so that it'll give you mental and physical energy. So you're not going, well, then I gave away half my retirement. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a client the other day that recently retired. Said I ran up all this credit card debt because and so now we have to decide, let's put a plan in to make it go away. I said, think about it. You're going to save a lot of money when you get rid of all that interest. Like, oh, well, I'm going to this place to get gas and they give me 5 cents off or 5%, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Okay, but now you owe money on that card. So you've lost the benefit of the 5 cents or 5%, whichever one it is that you're getting, because you're paying way more than that in interest all the time. Like those numbers add up. If you can, so there's two ways to do it, like that I think of, right? There's either attack the biggest balance with it. Well, I'm sorry, attack the smallest balance,
right?
Or attack the one with the highest interest rate. And I'll tell you, I went through this. I told you about when I ended up going back to school at Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to Rutgers, I had to pay for everything myself.
Oh, wow.
And that meant that I was paying, if I didn't have money, those credit card checks you get.
Yeah.
I would write those. I would pay for my rent that way. I would pay for my tuition if I was short, because I knew that there was a positive thing on the other side. I just had to get there.
Right.
And I finished my first year of work and I saw how much I paid in interest. I'm like, oh my God, I don't make enough to be able to repay that. So I put in place a plan, and my plan was to attack by the interest rate on the cards.
Yeah.
And I attacked the highest rate card first, paid it off. Then if I needed those those purchases we make all the time, like gas and groceries and stuff like that, that I knew I could pay back, they went on that card. So I wasn't going to run up additional interest while I was doing this. And then I attacked the next card.
Yeah.
And when they were done, no more credit card debt.
Yeah. So I love that. How long did it take you to pay off? Because this is the thing. This is a very common thing. It can take people, about a year-ish for people to pay off. And if they're below the age of 50, roughly, then they can often put it back on, all that credit card debt, like easily within 6 to 9 months, which is like, whew. Yeah. So how long did it take you?
So I would say it took me around a year, then I will tell you, I got lucky
Mhm.
because the time I got sent, I was working in public accounting. I got sent to an out of town job.
Yay.
And so they had all my expense, but I was living at home. So I didn't have
Mhm.
rent. Though eventually I will say, when I found out about the credit cards, I was now started, when my father forged my name later
Oh,
on,
yeah.
I did pay rent, but I used it to pay off those credit card balances so that they went
Good.
away. But I didn't have a lot of expenses, so I paid it off faster. Like, I think I set myself a 1 year timeline and I paid it off faster because I had all that time that I was out of town. And so my expenses were really, really low. And so I was able to be even more aggressive than I imagined.
Okay, so there you go. That's what I mean by like having an opportunity shows up. All of a sudden, you had this opportunity to work and out of town, you got paid a little bit more because your expenses went down. And then next thing you know, boom, things
Yes.
happen sooner. So that's what I mean. Like those opportunities can happen when people are a little more like, okay, I can get focused on this so that I will have something later to take care of. All right, Phil, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, it's like amazing your wealth of knowledge and actual life experience. Like there are some people out there that are like they've always been good with money, and I think that's wonderful. But most of us have that, maybe we had a few, hiccups here and there. And I think that kind of compassion really translates so that people can understand like, hey, I haven't been perfect, and let me show you how I got out of it. And here's some like 10 other awesome strategies that you can use. Yeah. All right, Phil, this was absolutely amazing. I know I'm going to see you tomorrow along with everyone else. So if you got your questions, feel free to see us tomorrow, November 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.